Hey YouTube, it's Brian here. I'm going to be doing part 7 of my top 100 favorite musicians of all time list. We're going to be starting off all the way at number 78, so we're almost 3/4 of the way through the list, I think. Um, I think we're going to start off at number 78 today, and that's probably the best female singer in all of folk music, and that would be Joan Baez. I heard about her first at the Newport Folk Festival, 1964, and my favorite song by her would have to be Farewell Angelina. I think that she also has good work on her own, not just Bob Dylan covers, though. She has she has the song Diamonds and Rust from the 70s, which has really well written lyrics, and her voice transitions genres well. Sorry, that didn't come out clearly. Anyways, yeah, I think Joan Baez is one of the best female folk singers of all time, up there with Joni Mitchell and others. Next up on my list is going to be the Bee Gees. I always think of Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake's exaggerated SNL impression of them, but the Bee Gees were one of the great bands of the disco era, and I think they're totally deserving of a spot here. Okay, let's get to the next spot. Probably number 80. We're at the 3/4 mark. Number 80. And that would be Joni Mitchell. Uh, One of the most versatile voices in all of music. She's lost some of her singing ability recently. I think she had a stroke or something, or an aneurysm. Um, but sadly, she's lost some of her singing ability in recent years, which is truly sad because she had one of the most versatile and well-ranged voices in all of music. I think her work, um, it's almost like listening to a hummingbird sing. I think we'll move on from there. Okay, number 81 is going to be taking a completely different turn, and that's going to be talking about rapper Immortal Technique. I think he's probably one of the best lyricists of the 2000s and the 2010s. Frankly, this is a guy who debuted pretty much the same year they were still doing those Wazop beer commercials in like 2000 or 2001. Society was not clearly in an intelligent place. So for him to be making all these politically aware songs, and he just has really smart lyrics. Listen to the song Creation and Destruction. It's really well written. I think he also, a cool thing about him is that he donated some of his money, and he's an independently contracted artist. He donated a good amount of his money to founding an orphanage across the seas. Um, I think that's pretty cool. The one kind of drawback about Immortal Technique is that um, he doesn't really make music that often. His last full album, I think, was in like 2011, and that was a greatest hits album. Um, so sadly, it's been like almost 10 years, 9 or 10 years since he's made an album. But he has a couple of really good ones, and I think that his lyrics on songs like that, um, I think they really justify his place on here for itself. Okay, so let's get to the next artist on this list, and that would be the Outlaws, best known, I think, from the late 70s for songs like Ghost Riders in the Sky, and for Green Grass and High Tides for their extended long performances of it featuring massively long guitar solos and everything. I think The Simpsons even parodied that once. Uh, but nevertheless, I love their live performances of Green Grass and High Tides, and that's one of my favorite songs. Um, I wonder what it's about sometimes, but the lyrics are so abstract to say the least. Okay, so let's get to number 83. Another kind of multi-genre influenced country rock band, the Marshall Tucker Band. They're also a band that has influences of jazz and blues and country in their music. It's not just rock and roll. A lot of the original band members from this band have sadly they're not in there anymore. They either moved on to pursue different projects, or they, for lack of a better term, died. You know, uh, so they only really have their singer Doug Gray left, I think. And well, they're uh, a couple good starting places for them. I think would have to be Fire on the Mountain, Can't You See? Um, yeah, they have a lot of really good starting places. They're a very listenable band. Number 84, um, befallen by a early tragedy in their band's history, would be the Allman Brothers. The Allman Brothers, I used to think as a kid, were called the Almond Brothers, Almond. But it turns out they're like all man, which is actually kind of funnier. The All Man Brothers. Nevertheless, this is also a very listenable southern rock band. They use a lot of slide guitar influences, and similar to bands like the Outlaws or the Grateful Dead, they're known primarily, I think, for their extended live concerts featuring massive, lengthy uh, improvisations and stuff. Number 86 on my list is one of my favorite personal singers, and that would be Rod Stewart, I think. I think that Rod Stewart kind of goes up there with like Elvis or Frank Sinatra in the sense that anything he sings instantly seemingly becomes better. Um, I love Rod Stewart's voice. Okay, we're going to get on to another great singer. This is actually one of my mother's favorite singers. It would be Nat King Cole. Nat King Cole didn't have the longest career, but at the same time, I think that he had probably one of the most beautiful voices in all of the soft jazz. Um, I think that when you listen to him, he instantly has a relaxing quality to him, a relaxing tone. Sorry. Okay, let's get on to number 87. Someone with pretty much the exact opposite voice, and that would be Janis Joplin. Not relaxing or smooth or soft or any of that stuff. Her voice is like a hissing teapot practically. Um, I think that Janis Joplin, uh, short as her career may have been, she left behind a legacy of breaking barriers for women with atypical voices. Not every woman had that kind of Joan Baez, uh, idealistic, perfect voice, pretty much. For the rest of us, or for the rest of them, rather, because I'm not a chick. For the rest of them, I guess, Janis Joplin kind of opened doors. Number 88 is Dan Fogelberg, a singer songwriter type. I think that he had some of the best lyrics and the smoothest voice. His guitar playing was also nice too. Okay. Number 89, famous for changing his name midway through his career to something really weird, and I don't even want to repeat it. It would be Cat Stevens. Um, I think Cat Stevens, he also, pretty much everything I said about the last guy kind of fits here. He's a singer songwriter type with a beautiful voice. It's not your typical, um, it's not your typical, like prototypical voice. He has a great voice in his own mold. Okay, let's get on to number 90. We only have a couple left. Wow. Number 90 is the Mamas and the Papas. They were a folk band similar to like Peter, Paul, and Mary. But when Mama Cass died, sadly, I think she OD'd when she was young. The band, I don't think, continued after that. Um, but they had a lot of really good songs, and their vocal harmonies, I think, were one of a kind. Next up on my list is going to be Stevie Wonder. I'm again reminded of SNL with Eddie Murphy and his unique Stevie Wonder impression. That was pretty. That was pretty accurate. He even looked a little bit like him, though the real Stevie Wonder was a little bit more chunky. Um, but we're not here to talk about that. I think that Stevie Wonder was an amazing musician. Similar to guys like Doc Watson, it's amazing that he achieved the level of success that he did while being completely blind, you know, and having to deal with the barriers of race too in that time, because he was from about 40 years back, like in the 70s, late 60s, I think. Um, but nevertheless, I think that Stevie Wonder is a real inspiration, regardless of any superficial factors, you know. Okay, so number 92 on here is actually going to be the Byrds, uh, an early 60s rock band who I think is really underrated. I think that my favorite song by them would have to be the song 8 Miles High, which they do a great live version of. I'm a big fan of psychedelic rock. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's get to number 93, and that would be Steve Miller. One of the artists I probably heard most frequently growing up on classic rock radio. I think I even saw Steve Miller live, or I almost did, but I had to leave the concert, or it was actually the Kincert with Greg Kihn, you know. It was like with Greg Kihn, George Thorogood, and Steve Miller was the headliner. But I don't think I got to see Steve Miller, unfortunately, because we had to leave the concert early. That kind of sucked. But yeah, Steve Miller was always one of my favorite artists growing up, and I think that similar to Tom Petty, he has that simple, down home, kind of basic, raw, uh, kind of classic American country rock band kind of style. I think that he's up there in terms of where I would rank him in that genre. Okay, number 94, the Yardbirds, fronted by Keith Ralph, who actually he underwent a motorcycle accident and he had a punctured lung, but he kept singing even though his voice was notably more thin and kind of high pitched. Um, he still sounds good. I think that the Yardbirds were probably one of the most underrated bands of the decade, and I think that they kind of got swallowed up in the shadow of bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and stuff. And there was also people like Elvis back then, and uh, well, yeah, I think that they kind of got swallowed up in the shadow of better known and better publicized bands. We're probably going to stop here for today at number 93. Uh, and that probably means that tomorrow, in tomorrow's video, rather, we'll finish the series. Um, and I guess it'll be pretty fun. Thank you for being with me this far. I love you guys. I'm out.